HOA story time. We're going to court. Okay, posted by deleted. The setting: United States, northern neck of Virginia. The situation: bought land and built a house on it. Back when my wife and I were much more newlywed than we are now, we hired ourselves an architect and went whole hog on having our cozy little dream home designed. While this was being done, we went shopping around for a parcel of land on which to have it built, which went quickly and easily, and we even got a pretty nice deal on a half-acre lot that was just far enough back in the sticks for us to be happy, but close enough to our jobs that it wasn't much of a commute. Best part of all, no homeowners association. There weren't any active back in that area because, point blank, it was full of poor people back there. Dirt poor country types and working poor wage slave types. We made very sure with our lawyer that no previous owner had ever had the title amended to allow for any HOA nonsense as well, because that's a thing some real estate developers like to do. They'll buy up a property, get the title amended to force the membership of that property into a local HOA that they usually operate or are in cahoots with those who do, and then resell it with that as a new requirement for any prospective buyer to automatically agree to when they sign the title. Flash forward to August of 2019. COVID was just around the corner, but nobody knew that yet. Everything was that which passes for normal out in those parts, and my wife and I had since moved to a different location, but retained that property as one of our various rentals. It was our dream home for several years, and we loved that place. Moving was tough. It was a good neighborhood out there, and folks were very welcoming. Then a company that's totally not named LIEN Homes or anything even slightly similar, they came in and they spent some years buying everything up back there that got the market and pressuring folks into selling, which worked out for them only too well. And, of course, they gentrified everything. For 3 years and some change, there was massive amounts of the old being torn down and hauled out and the new being built up and sold. The HOA was built right in because, of course it was. Folks with money enough to throw down on crappily built houses that looked nice from the front moved in one by one and two by two. Property values in the area skyrocketed, property taxes skyrocketed right along with them, and more of the less poor people were forced to sell because they got taxed out of their own homes. My wife and I knew what was coming from the get-go. We knew those dinguses from Totally Not LIEN Homes were going to come sniffing around our way, not to try and buy us out, but to see if they could finagle, schmooze, or threaten us into joining the HOA that they were installing. It was inevitable. Lots of information is public record. They knew that we had money. They knew we were living below our means by 2 orders of magnitude. They knew we clearly meant to be exactly where we were because we sure didn't have to be. They knew they didn't have a snowflake's hope in heck of pricing us out on taxes, so they tried nagging us to death and coming right up to the line on harassment, always to talk to us about joining the HOA. They failed. They got told by one expensive lawyer to find something else to do before we all got super busy helping them find things to worry about. And so they desisted for some years. Then my wife and I moved and got the property set up as a rental. Absolutely Not LIEN Homes starts bothering our tenants there, both trying to get them to pressure us into putting the property into the HOA, as well as getting our tenants riled up with the most outrageous lies about what could happen if we, the owners, don't protect our renters better. My wife and I were livid after hearing about this crap, and so we got a hold of Definitely Not LIEN Homes to let them know that this was our formal request that they stop bothering our tenants and that all further communications would be from our really expensive lawyer. They must have assumed that we were bluffing, or maybe whoever was in charge of thinking that day didn't show up for work, because they just kept right on with their nonsense. It got so bad that they were even sending fake but convincing looking envelopes with eviction notice that, upon being opened, said, "Could be what you find in your mailbox one day without our wondrous HOA," and containing information about the benefits of the HOA. We gathered it all up, and we got the tenants to talk to our lawyer and got the police involved to get the ball rolling on a harassment investigation. Another formal request to cease and desist was sent to Never Ryan Homes by the very expensive lawyer, which they utterly ignored. I think their guy that's supposed to come to work and think about things think he quit a long time ago. Maybe he never told anyone. Maybe nobody noticed. Whatever the situation on their end, when my lawyer talked to their lawyer told my lawyer that their client was doing everything legally and that if we wanted to pursue the matter in court, that was what we'd have to do. So we did. I'm not sure what kind of lawyer magic my lawyer and his fellow legal demons worked on this front, but we were in court for 1 single hour when my lawyer and their 4 lawyers and the judge had a private talk after the preliminary hearing. Half an hour later, and the lawyers from maybe Ryan Homes come back into the courtroom looking like a quartet of cats that have been peed on. My lawyer takes a seat beside me and says, "They're going to settle." And I was like, "I didn't think we were that far along into this yet. What happened?" And he said, "They built 51 homes in this county over the last 2 years. Every single one of them was inspected before close of sale by a real estate agent that never actually got around to getting their home inspector license. And that's how Was It Ryan Homes the whole time paid me 10 grand to not sue them while they got bent over by the county and the state and tag teamed like the new boy with the pretty lips in a prison yard." It's the Great Pumpkin Vindictive HOA President, posted by Deleted. I babysat and elder sat for the neighbors down the street who committed this malicious compliance, so I was there to hear the ranting as this whole mess went down. We'll call my neighbors Liz and Dave. They were nice folks who ran afoul of the Homeowners Association when the busybody president, who lived next door to them, we'll call her Joan, got it in her rotted turnip for a brain that Liz and Dave had taken in an illegal renter. Renting out rooms was strictly against HOA policy. They had not rented out a room. Liz's elderly mother had moved in with them after breaking her hip and being unable to live alone anymore. Joan sent them a very threatening letter about their unlawful renter and how fines would accrue if the unlawful renter didn't vacate immediately. It was accompanied with a copy of that part of the bylaws and pictures of Liz's elderly mother taken through windows of their house. Creep alert! They wrote back that there was no renter and they explained the situation. Joan did not believe that story and had the HOA lawyers start sending them certified letters about their continued violations with ever-increasing insane fines. This went over poorly. Liz and Dave got their own lawyer to fire back a cease and desist letter. After many increasingly aggressive back and forth, it all culminated in an association meeting where Liz, Dave, and Liz's mother came in with ID and birth certificates and basically made Joan look like the pimple on the backside of humanity that she was. They won, but Joan was furious and swore that she'd get them for something. Joan maintained until the day I left for college, last I knew of her, that Liz and Dave had forged those driver's license and birth certificates to keep their unlawful renter. Cut to the following fall. Liz and Dave needed to repaint the house after making some siding repairs post-hurricane. They carefully checked the bylaws for approved paint colors and picked out a fairly bland shade of something between brown and tan. They gave the painters the color info listed in the bylaws to the painters, and then the painting happened. Less than a week after their house was painted, they got another certified letter from the HOA lawyer stating that their house was in the wrong color. They fired back evidence that they ordered exactly what was in the bylaws. Well, after many back and forths, it turned out that the approved color and the swatches on file with the board no longer matched because the manufacturer had changed the colors in their line slightly due to some kind of formula change. Their house was a few shades darker than it should have been. See, the bylaws listed the manufacturer color info for convenience, but the shades actually had to match the official swatches that you could have theoretically borrowed from the board and gotten color matched. Nobody ever did that, but Joan was out for blood after the unlawful renter and forced them to have to repaint. Liz and Dave were taking no chances on the second try. They got the swatch set from the HOA, and for some reason, it made no distinction between approved accent colors, most houses in the neighborhood had brightly colored doors, or house colors. They decided that if they had to paint the house a second time, Joan, the dog that caught the car, could live next to the most garish option they had. It was pumpkin orange. The painters asked multiple times if they were sure. Yeah, they were very sure. You couldn't see the orange from inside, but you sure could from next door. Joan made many attempts to object to this, but it was within the letter of the HOA rules, and the house stayed orange until long after I moved away. This commenter sums up the HOA president by saying, "True story. One time we, my college buddies who were living with me, and some fellow young folks, obviously renters as well, were in the hot tub, and the Queen HOA demon came and sat down in there with us. They were very polite and introduced themselves to her, and then said, 'What's your name?' She responded with one word, 'Owner.' HOA held a meeting discussing annual fees and threatened to lien on our house if we don't pay. We never joined an HOA. My husband and I bought our house 27 years ago and were told that there was no homeowners association. We have never joined, paid dues to, enjoyed the amenities of, or otherwise interacted with an HOA in our time living here. We received notice last month that there is, in fact, an HOA and that they were holding a mandatory meeting, which we both attended tonight. We were told the following: they haven't even been active in 10 years and that they're now in debt for a streetlight bill. That this meeting was held to discuss raising the monthly fee from $40 to $50, and that when we and several neighbors protested, as again we have never agreed to this or seen any sign of its existence, we were told that all bylaws and covenants applied to us since we bought the property, and that our realtor was at fault for failing to disclose the HOA when we bought the house. They said that a neighbor who found somewhere online that the HOA for our neighborhood was dissolved in 2005 was incorrect. I can't find where this information would be listed, sorry for lack of detail, still looking. The president of the HOA has confirmation that they are still active and in good legal standing. Also, no further detail on this. If non-payment continued, a lien would be placed on our house if we were to sell it, and that the HOA is voluntary but the covenants are not. I'm very concerned for this, for a lot of reasons. The covenants are dated from 1989, and several of them have most of the neighborhood in violation. One that was brought up was a restriction to only 3 cars per household. We have several families with teenagers who drive, and several car guys who keep classic cars as projects, and I would hate to see them punished for something they didn't agree to. The president of the HOA did not appear to understand email, so I think I'll have a hard time getting anything in writing besides the printouts that I was given, and the main spokesperson was very dismissive and talked over me nearly every time I tried to clarify something or raise a concern. Is there anything we can do? I'm currently just reading through these bylaws and covenants just to make sure I understand them, and trying to find if South Carolina has any sites that can tell me if they can actually come after us for non-payment to something that we never signed up for, and would love as much advice as possible. Do you agree with this? You'll need to look at your deed. Either you're absolutely part of the HOA, unknowingly signing up wouldn't matter, or you aren't at all, and again, signing up wouldn't matter. OP says, yes, that was meant to say a monthly fee, $40 to $50. Still quite cheap in comparison to the richer neighborhoods, but not affordable at all for us. Checking over the deed now, and I am not seeing any mention of HOA either way. Does that mean we're in the clear, or I just need to look harder? They said OP might be getting the declaration and CC&Rs mixed up, and OP says they don't understand the difference. So what do you do in this situation? I say get a hold of a lawyer that knows exactly what they're doing down to the T. What would you do? My mind is constantly haunted by the cringe of my past. I was having a casual conversation with one of my friends recently, during which she said a single word that triggered a rush of embarrassing memories into my mind's eye. I had to take a break in the middle of a sentence, press my fingers against my temples, and allow them to pass through before I could engage in conversation again. She asked me what I was doing, and I didn't know how to explain myself. All I said in response was, bad thoughts. This has been happening more and more lately, and it's those same memories that rush to the forefront of my mind when I close my eyes to sleep at night. I'm constantly beaten down by the flood of recollections of my past. Mishandled social interactions, awful decisions, and the thought of who I once was. It makes me want to slam my head against a wall until I black out. I need a place to express myself, so forgive me for using this place like a confessional booth at a church. I'm now going to narrate a story that's burdened my soul for a long time, in hopes that it will alleviate my pain in some way. There was an interclass competition in my college organized by one of the many student councils. It was related to the business stream, and there would be 10 rounds for each of the different areas of commerce, like management, entrepreneurship, finance, marketing, and so on. This competition that I signed up for because I thought it would look good on my resume was a breeding ground for some of the most embarrassing memories of my life. Let me state right off the bat that I was in over my head. I never planned on winning. My goal was simply to participate regardless of my general incompetence and immaturity. Before the rounds for the management part of the competition began, we were asked to take a general aptitude test, the point of which I thought was to straightaway eliminate unfit candidates. It was a mixture of verbal, math, personality, logic questions, and after a certain point in the process of writing the test, I realized that my chances of getting to participate are slim to none. So I started to do one of my favorite things to do: self-sabotage. I don't know why. My juvenile brain works this way, but when I know that something isn't going well, I like to self-sabotage and make things worse for myself. It's my way of extracting a little bit of fun out of a hopeless situation. And after I answered all the questions that I thought I knew the answer to, I filled the rest of the paper with joke responses and wacky doodles. I submitted my answer sheet, and that was that. I just thought I'd never have to think about it again. After a while, I got to know that I was selected for the first round of management, which was supposed to be a personal interview. I couldn't believe it, but I assumed my non-joke responses is what got my foot in the door. I also assumed that the interview would be something simple, like one where they asked me basic questions about my background, academics, or accomplishments. That was generally my experience with student council interviews up until that point. On the day of my interview, when I walked in and sat in front of the 6 interviewers, who were just my seniors in the last year of their undergraduate degree, much to my horror, they took out the answer sheet of the test I wrote. I immediately realized at that point that the whole point of this interview would be to follow up on the answers that I gave on the test that I thought would never come back to bite me in the butt. Go figure. Now, I don't even know how to begin describing the intense stupidity of the next couple of minutes. Bear with me, because we're entering optimum levels of cringe. One of the first questions they asked me was, what movie title best describes who you'll become in the future? The answer that I wrote for this was The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which wasn't even freaking funny. It's the most obvious joke that anyone could have ever made. I probably stopped thinking at that point during the exam and was writing, whatever popped into my head. The interviewers then asked me why I wrote that as my response. The obvious thing to do would have been just to claim that it was a joke, but that's not what I did. I started to explain how I'm unsuccessful with women. I'd like to remind you that this is happening in front of a group of students who were only 2 years older than me. I was speaking at length in a professional interview about how I've never been good at interacting with members of the opposite sex. Holy crap! But it gets worse. They then proceeded to one of the next questions that asked something like, which would reach the ground faster when dropped, an egg or a feather? I don't remember what I wrote as the answer, but I do remember that it was correct because I've heard that question before. Unfortunately, I also drew an unsolicited illustration of an egg and a feather dropping to amuse myself. When they pointed it out to me, I told them that I just did that to make whoever was reading the paper laugh. They proceeded to explain to me how unfunny I was. They then asked me if I had any extracurricular achievements. I mentioned that I had a green belt in karate, which isn't impressive at all, but I assumed they wouldn't know that. They then asked me why I didn't master the sport. I did a very poor job of explaining how karate is more comparable to a choreographed dance than anything that would be practical in a self-defense situation. In the middle of this explanation, I got up from my seat and did a kata pose and told them, I can't do this in the middle of a fight, can I? It was only after I struck the pose that I realized that these people didn't know what the frick I was showing them. They didn't know what a kata was. All they saw was me inexplicably getting up from my seat in the middle of a conversation and striking a pose for no good reason. The female interviewer, right in front of me, had this bewildered expression on her face that screamed, "Why the heck did you just do that?" To be clear, I was so nervous that I wasn't even talking straight. I wasn't so much talking as I was incoherently mumbling to myself. Yeah, just mumbling like this or something. Don't believe for a moment that I was speaking in full sentences at any point in this interview. Do you know what the best part was? The creme de la creme? At some point in this interview, I thought that I should become more assertive and confident. Maybe I should channel someone I know. So I started scanning my brain for people who I thought were confident, which led me to think about public speakers. Their whole job is to speak confidently in front of a large crowd. But I didn't know any public speakers, so what's the closest equivalent that I do know? Stand-up comedians. Yeah. Who's a stand-up comedian that I like? Bill Burr. Yeah, Bill Burr, out of all people. So, starting from some random point in the interview, I started to emulate the mannerisms, style of speaking, and body language of Bill freaking Burr. It took way too long to snap out of it and act like myself again. After the interview concluded and I exited the room, I could very clearly hear laughing and one of them saying, "What was that?" I decided to just go home straight away and cry into a pillow. I, 30-year-old female, have worked at the same tech company for 10 years come April. In my entire working career, this has been the worst year, 2023. Every week seems to be worse than the last. For the first time in a long time, I went home in tears last week. As a result of multiple employees quitting or changing departments, I had to handle a lot of work. I'm a single person supervising a team of 3. That was my assumption, at least. I was yesterday years old when I found out that I had another employee reporting to me. Cue the story. My CEO returned from India yesterday, and boy did I know it. While I ate my lunch at my desk, dry cereal straight from the bag with my hands like a starving heathen all while still working, he repeatedly stormed into my office, screaming about this and that. Par for the course, really. But then, the said employee and his work were addressed to me both passionately and loudly. "I can't believe you let this happen. Why was he working like this? How was he trained this poorly? And lastly, why does your office look like an evil scientist's laboratory after a tornado hit? There is far too much dangerous equipment, a mini refrigerator and a water cooler. You need to move it and do something about all this paperwork. Make your team help you clean your office." Now, it should be noted that 1, my boss is English as a second language. He meant to say remove, but he said move. And 2, I have no previous experience with this employee. And 3, I have no idea what he does or how he does it. However, how could I not have noticed that he was doing it poorly? Now, in between mouthfuls of cereal, I tried to calm him down to no avail. Sir, I've never done this and I couldn't have possibly trained him on this. I didn't know he was under me until today, so I wouldn't have known. And this is all unfinished work, but yes, I plan to clean my office." He continued to loudly and passionately speak to me for wasting time, reiterated that I needed to clean my office, move the dangers, and then promptly left my office, only to skip our important evening meeting. To be fair, due to my insane workload, my office does look like a tornado hit, but it's all unfinished work that needs to be done, and I know very well he was intending to say remove. But a direct order from my supervisor and CEO cannot go unheard. Since this year has been insane, I've put on 20 pounds from a combination of increased work time, stress, and stress-eating candy. So I had already ordered an office treadmill. I was waiting for the chance to bring it all in. Well, I'm under strict instructions to clean my office and move my dangerous equipment, so I might as well do it. I cleared my desk, moved a stand-up desk adjustment piece onto my desk, put my other 2 monitors on monitor stands, added my treadmill, hit my desk chair, and put all my paperwork, which was spread out across my desk, into one large pile. I relocated the mini fridge and moved the water cooler by about half an inch, all on the clock. When my CEO walked into my clean office, he was very clearly not pleased. His face was magnificent. I continued cleaning, missing many important meetings along the way. And let me tell you, the treadmill has been divine. Watching my head bobbing in meetings is delightful. There's an edit. Backstory. I started as the receptionist, and I'm now the department head of procurement and administration, the executive assistant to the CEO, the corporate office manager, the corporate tax document preparer for the CPA, and temp AR lead, to name a few. Just basically translate it to office witch. But I am obviously insanely busy. Now, why, you ask, do I do all this? I was told to quit or marry the company, and it's obvious the choice I made, and my coworkers often tell me they hate my husband. The CEO and I joke around that I'm the redheaded stepchild my Indian CEO never had, and he is the disappointed Indian father that I've never had. He's seen me grow up and thinks of me as family. It's a tech company, and, like many, we are having issues. It's been a rough year. It's not a perfect job by any means, but it pays well and has benefits. I'm also comfortable. Also, I think you're all missing that I did all of this, and there were and will be no repercussions. It's not all as bad as it seems, just chuckle at the story. Now here's a new edit. My boss came back into my office at the end of the day, and I guess he was just displeased with my cleanup because he saw my treadmill and he told me, "No, you can't have that, it's dangerous." I died. Now while I realize that everyone is well-meaning, one story doesn't give you a glimpse into everything. It was carefully curated with me sharing it in Reddit on Mind. Yes, my boss yells, and yes, I do a lot of work. Yes, I am stressed. But it's only been 3 months into the year. And please take into account that everyone is different. I'm a feelings-based person, and my boss is a logic-based person. We make one heck of a team, but sometimes we're on the same page in different books. You know, it's always the best kind of MC when the boss gives you instructions and you literally follow them even though it's not what they mean. It's the spirit of it. As you can see with the picture of the office here, I think OP did a great job at this malicious compliance. And although they don't get along with their boss all the time, as we see, they did an awesome job here. Way to go, OP. Today I screwed up by giving myself an allergic reaction, posted by Emotional Theory 7800. Obligatory actual the mess up happened 2 days ago, but it wasn't until today that I realized what actually happened. 2 days ago, my wife, 33, decided to have her hair dyed due to gray hair strands sticking out. Me, 34 male, being the loving husband that I am and having a hair dyeing box lying around since earlier in the house, offered to dye her hair for her. It was combined with a mini spa day where I spoil her with massage and making her bathing time in the bathtub as relaxing as possible. All as a reward from getting healthy from a common cold where she was sick for almost 2 weeks. Me, having never dyed someone or my own hair for that matter, was both excited but also nervous for doing it for the very first time. Nervous because I was scared, that I might mess her hair up, but I was also excited that if I do it well, then hey, I'll be able to do it more often in the future for her. Dyeing her hair was quite the experience. At first it was difficult due to miscalculating how much hair dye was in the bottle, so in the beginning I was not using as much hair dye as I should have and ended up having to go back and dye the lacking parts of her hair as well, which according to the manual is not wrong. Eventually, I finished dyeing her hair and she was really happy with the results, and that gave me confidence to offer it next time she wanted to get her hair dyed again. Thank you, dear audience, for staying with me for so long, but this is where the actual screw-up happens. The next morning, I wake up with rashes all over my skin. Me, having an unfortunate experience with bed bugs in my youth, believed that the rashes must come from the sofa bed that I sleep in separately from my wife due to different sleeping habits. So here I was, bummed out, thinking we'd need to get the whole apartment sanitized. Later on during the afternoon, I tried to look for signs from bed bugs, but to no avail. I was not able to find any single insect of trace of bed bugs on the bed sofa. But my skin was increasingly getting itchier and itchier throughout the night, and I'd been scratching myself all over. Towards the evening, I decided to have a look at my own body to see the impact of these bed bugs, and I was quite shocked to say the least. There were red patches all over my body, with rashes on all the places I'd scratched myself, even on my face. And that is when the confusion cleared up for me that I might not be dealing with bed bugs, but instead, an allergic reaction. So the first thing that I do is to Google the allergic reaction symptoms from the hair dye, and it says there's something called urticaria, or hives, which causes rashes over your body, and they look exactly like bedbug bites in my opinion. So now I know that I have very sensitive skin and can see that the rashes appear where I scratch myself. Luckily, I have some mild cortisone cream to apply for the coming days. So, on a positive note, I might not have to get my apartment sanitized after all, which is a relief because our current finances are not doing so well. On the negative side, however, I may never get to dye my wife, or anyone else's hair for that matter, again. The HOA demands they put a lien on my house, but I'm not even in the HOA, so click a video on your screen, you don't want to miss it, and I will see you there.